Welcome, everybody, to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. So happy to have a guest here today. And the topic of today's discussion is shining a light on unconscious grief, and especially for the feminine. So we are so honored to actually have Sadie Bess with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi there. So nice to be here.
So nice to have you. And I love your little background in the back. It feels very zen, very warm, very cozy. So it kind of matched with the background that I have here. It's different, but the color kind
Yeah,
of, you know,
same
they
colors.
complement each other. So it's meant for a reason. And I want to do a really brief intro of Sadie. So she is actually an energy healer as well as a ritual creator. She designs so many programs. She's a belief system buster. She holds circles for women. And all around, what we mean to say is she shines a light on the unconscious grief and inherent wound of the feminine. So this is what she does best. And I'm sure she had so much more to add to that, which I will leave her to explain it. But for the moment, let's start with honoring Sadie's life story, how she grew up, where that was. Where was it that you grew up?
Whew, okay, so we'll go back to day one because it really is the start of it all for me. At birth, I was put up for adoption, and my birth mother, my biological mother, really had some issues. It sounds like maybe some mental health things going on. I don't know if there was addiction. I don't know. Of course, I didn't meet her, but whew, and so I was conceived and in a womb that was not a healthy environment,
Mm.
for me. And a lot of stress, a lot of, you know, fear-based energy. It's just very, very unhealthy place to be. And then being born, um, back then, at the time, they would take a newborn baby, from the mother and put you there for like 6 weeks. And then after that, your new adoptive parents come and get you. So at this point, you're 6 weeks into your life, you've lost your mother, you've lost the newest, the new parents that you've got. Oh, did I lose you?
Yeah, my connection was, it's okay. It's good. I'm back
Okay.
now.
Okay, good, good, good. But, at this point, 6 weeks in to your life, you've lost your mother and your biological family, and then the people that were watching you, your new parents, you've lost to them now, and you're in with another family. And, needless to say, it was a little challenging. I didn't cope very well. I am a very sensitive person. I just came in very sensitive, and that was really, really challenging for me. So my adoptive mother said I cried a lot. I was just upset all the time, and they didn't understand what was going on with me. Um, it was a lot of that, go to your room, be quiet, you're too emotional, it's too much. And I just, I started shutting down more and more and more. So eventually that just led to a lot of anger, a lot of anger issues, and not getting along with my so there was a divorce, of course, with the parents. That didn't go well, at age 6. So that was really a lot of trauma around the masculine energy in my life that just left us on our own, and we ended up on food stamps and not being able to pay our bills and such. And my mother, who was just already super stressed, we weren't getting along, and it was too much for her. So she had me leave the house at 11 because at this point I was already getting into trouble and, just not doing well because I was trying to, I don't know, I just had so much angst, so much, and so I was getting involved with people. We ended up in a mobile home park. We went from middle class into this lower class situation. My mother's gone all the time. So, I ended up hanging out with the other kids that were also traumatized, and it doesn't go well. So,
Isn't
um,
that the story for quite a
yeah. And
few
then
children's?
Really? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then just at 11, she just couldn't deal with me anymore. So then just moving around to different family members who also weren't dealing with me very well. Um, nobody knew, and I didn't know until much later, like how much I was grieving the
Mhm.
loss of my mother. So, um, I know now all the symptoms as I started learning more about grief. I mean, I'm fast forwarding quite a bit, but
Mhm.
I can see so clearly that there was a lot of complicated grief, and these are some terminology, ambiguous loss. Like, was my mother ever coming back for me? What was wrong with me? Why didn't she like me? I took it in really deeply, and just my self-esteem was horrible. So, I acted in ways that enforced that, reinforced that low self-esteem, not feeling good about myself. And
Mhm.
eventually, of course, this led to drugs, because there was something that would help me to feel better about
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And I was I found people who would accept me, and just that would hang out with me. So, and then that oh, don't need to say how bad that can go,
Mhm.
So so that went off in its, not good direction. And um, I ended up running away. And after I was with my father for a while, running away and just going, and I had a place to stay for a while, but eventually ended up on the streets, on heroin, not good, and then started ending up in jails, which really not good. I still feel funny sharing about that,
Mhm.
because there's so much stigma in our society, and I really try to just own my story, but that's part of the self-worth that we take in so deeply,
Yeah.
and it's really hard because we know, and part of the drugs is helping it to numb out from that
Yeah.
pain and shame and that embarrassment, and just like, oh my gosh, this wasn't what my life was supposed to be like.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to just keep going here?
Yes,
'Cause
because I really enjoy the story because it's a story that is so important to bring to the forefront. So much shame surround these types of story, and yet there's so many people out there that are hurting. And so here we are, we get a chance to actually talk to the younger youth and whoever may be going through the process. So please, I am enthralled. So I'm like staying quiet.
good, good, good. Okay, cool. So yeah, drugs, that just went on for a long time, or it felt like a long time, just because it's such an unpleasant way to be, which, ended up being really abusive relationships I got into, physically abusive relationships. And really it was just an absolute hell,
Mhm.
and finally, finally, I ended up in a place, in Portland, where I had a little more stability. I was still on drugs, but I was able to get a job, and I was trying to cut down, I remember. Um, and then there was like a raid on my house when I was at work. So the police came and took everything away, and took my boyfriend away. And that gave me the opportunity to, because he sold drugs. So it was really challenging to get away from the drugs when they were just right there. But him
Mhm.
leaving was just like, oh my gosh, here's my opportunity to try to be sober. So I got on methadone, and the methadone actually worked. And I was amazed
Mhm.
because it just like, anyway, so I quit using that day. That was it. I never used again. I was just like, "Oh
Wow.
my gosh," because, the sickness from it is really hard to get off of. So really hard to move beyond that. Really hard. But that methadone worked great. So, but then it wasn't long because I went back into, I had to deal with myself and that shame and all this stuff, and starting from scratch and trying to build a new life. And then alcohol entered the picture, and that made me feel great again. So then it was off and running on that. So anyway, we'll fast forward about 10 years after drinking for a long time, and that going really not well either. So, but a lot more stability with that.
Mhm.
Um, and one day just finally, like, I don't know, a moment of clarity and being able to get clear, and and stopped drinking. And after the fiance left and such, but that started me on my spiritual path with AA, and that is where it just all started blossoming. Once it was time, it was time. It was really interesting because I had been struggling. And so then met a community and just started really getting into energy work, working with my own energy body and learning different practices and the meditations and such. But it was a Hindu tradition called Kashmir Shaivism, and these different, working with the energy of the body and learning how to move the blockages and clear. And so much started happening for me during that period. And that's when some real healing started. It wasn't about mental, just talking about it, but it was actually moving the energy that I'd been carrying with me since really birth, clearing it out of my system. And that's when the flow started happening, and I just started having a lot of breakthroughs and movement forward, and my healing really moved forward in a big way. And then at that same time, I also started talking to my ancestors, which, because I was adopted, I always felt like I didn't have ancestors,
Right.
I just felt so disconnected. So that was I remember it so well. I had my little altar set up. I created my little ancestor altar, as my teacher had taught me about. And she's like, just talk to them. And so I did. I just started talking, and it was just like this warmth that I felt around me. It was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I am not so alone in the world. I actually did come from somewhere. I actually do have,
No.
you know, and it was a game changer. So a lot happened with that teacher in that community that just really, really changed everything. So doing all these practices every day and working with this and learning so much. And through this, I also started getting really interested in death and dying and wanting to work in that area. Oh, because I had some really powerful deaths in my life. That's right. That's what really turned that around. So I just got super interested in supporting people through the dying process, really in a spiritual um capacity, so I started working at hospice and going to school and learning a lot about grief and how to work with that, because I had experienced 3 deaths in about I don't know, like a 6-week period of time that were
Wow.
very different deaths. It was my grandmother who was um she'd been ill for a long time with dementia and such, she had a few strokes. So, I watched her decline over some years, and by the time near her death, it wasn't my grandmother anymore. That's like this anticipatory grief. You're grieving for a long time. It's and by the time she died, I was just like, thank goodness, she's free. I didn't have like a real grief and sadness around that, because it felt more like a freedom and a good release. But also, like a few weeks later, a friend got hit on the freeway in a head-on collision, and who I had just seen the night before. And just and that tore a hole into my heart and soul in a way like I had never experienced before. The anguish was really exquisite, and I remember I just fell on the floor, and I remember thinking in this anguish that was just like, savor this moment, because we don't get to have emotions of this intensity that often. It was this wide range of spectrums. There's so many emotions we get to experience, and nothing, only that can create that. It was really a really interesting thing that I had that consciousness and that awareness in the moment to really savor it, even though it was, I don't know. It's
No, it
just,
makes perfect sense because
yeah.
it's not something that most people would do, but for you to have that insight to go, I'll never feel this type of intensity, this emotion ever again. And to just capture that and to, I mean, you can choose to do many things with that, but either you can choose to honor that or you can choose to really dwell or hurt in it. But I think your insight is definitely dead on because it's not something that you get to experience it all the time. So there's definitely a reason behind that too.
Yeah, it was super powerful. And then that friend, he came and visited me through the night for the next 3 nights and
Mhm.
just spent the evenings with me, teaching me all these lessons and interesting wisdom that was just that opened me up to the spiritual aspect of death that I had not known before because I hadn't really experienced a lot of death.
Mhm.
Um, so and then a few weeks later, there was this woman that I'd been in a women's writing group, and she was hosting it in her home,
Mhm.
and she always wrote this really just dark, melancholy,
Mhm.
um, but gorgeous writing, it was just so deep and profound and just wow, and haunting, it was just like, wow.
Mhm.
And, like, we could tell she was in pain, and I guess some of the other members knew her more, but
Mhm.
I did not know her really that well, so I was still pretty shy, so, and not very talkative, which is not the case anymore.
That's okay. That's okay. We're allowed to change.
Yeah, oh, yeah, totally, I love it now. But, so I never reached out to her, I didn't know her, but then, one of the women's groups, the next one that I went to, we were all sitting in the room, and the leader of the group, she said, "I just wanted to let you know that Jen committed suicide." And it was just like, "What?" I felt I just didn't know how to feel, I felt so horrible and guilty for not saying anything. But I felt bad because, like, I didn't know her. Do I even get to grieve this? Is it okay that I feel this way?
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't know who to talk to about, like, am I just being dramatic? Like,
Mhm.
it was weird, but it really affected me in a strong way that this other human being that was in that much pain and I didn't reach out, you know? Um, and yeah, so those 3 different deaths and 3 very different griefs, and that's what started me on my path to wanna start working with grief because 'cause I'm like, "We don't know how to do grief here, let's work on this because I was just like, "Wow."
Mhm.
Um, so that's when I started going to school, like, I wanna work with grief, and,
Mhm.
went through my first, got my first degree, that was an associate's in gerontology, because that's where the death and dying,
Yeah. I
you
want to
know
pause something with regards to
Yeah,
that that's really interesting because grief is something that it's so taboo still today. It's hard. And it's if you are able to gain the skill of how to overcome grief, because it's very difficult. And I want to dive into that because it's a topic that really highly interests me. I actually lost my little baby sister, like all of my podcast audience knows this, but my baby sister to depression, also suicide. So grief it's and it's funny that you should say that your friend he came over and visit you in the dream and taught you a whole bunch of things because she also came into my dream, but it was a different kind of like, you get scared. Like I am scared of the dark, so I sometimes still sleep with the lights. And I'm scared of monster. I can't even watch scary movie because I have really very vivid imagination. So I don't even want to go there. So when she passed away, I wasn't sure, is she gonna look like a zombie or like something very it's very scary. But no, she came into my dream and it was basically, she just told me I am exactly the same form in the human form as I am in the dead. And she basically just wanted to came and pass a message to my parents, to tell them that she loves them and that she's sorry, for having done the act that if she could have known the impact on the family and what that would have done because she was suffering so badly, she wouldn't have committed the suicide. but when you hurt so bad, you don't see any other solution. You just want to, end it all. And the reason why I understand that is because I had postpartum depression when I had my first baby daughter, and I nearly drove myself off a cliff. And so off a bridge, I mean off a bridge. But luckily for me, I have very strong intuitions. It was the funniest thing. When I was about to have my postpartum depression, like I had a premonition that tells me I was going to go through depression, and that I should do everything that I need to do research. And I work in the field of the helping field, study psychologies and all of that, so that I can do everything that I need to read every book to prep because it's coming. But luckily for me, it basically told me that it would be very temporary. It wouldn't last long enough for me to feel the effect of like a full effect of the depression. But what surprised me the most was that even though it was a short span, I nearly did drove myself off the bridge. Like it didn't have to take you so long to get to that point. And so I asked, like, before I had it, I asked, like, why would you give me this postpartum depression? Like, I don't need it.
Right.
You could save it for somebody else. And it basically said, well, it doesn't make sense right now, but you need to go through this because something in your life in the future, you will experience a very difficult. This is prepping me for my sister's loss. This is like a couple years later, but it just tells me in the future. I'm like, well, who would have depression? I didn't know my sister was suffering in silence. She kept it so well. She disguised it so well. She's always happy. She's always, but she was suffering deep down inside. And there was a lot of self-hatred towards herself, a lot of shame. And so that for me, it basically said, you need to go through this in order to really understand what's coming up in the future, because an event will come up in your life and it's going to be earth shattering. And this will allow you to gain insight of the pain of it. Didn't say my sister, it just is people's pain. So I'm like, okay. So I accepted it. I'm like, okay, if I must understand other people's pain, if this is a temporary thing so that I can understand better, I accepted it. So that really gives me insight. So when my sister told me she was suffering from depression, I didn't judge her, because I remember when I was a kid, I heard people in high school committed suicide and I thought they were coward.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
was quick to judge. And so I am glad I went through the postpartum. It allowed me to be of assistance to my sister, to not judge her, to understand her, to even let her know that I understand what that pain felt like. Although I'm not going through her depression, but I understand that when you're hurting so bad, like nothing really makes sense. Like it just feels like nothing gives you, like life just doesn't have any more taste, smell. It just has nothing. You are void of emotion and you want to feel something, but all you feel is hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that really gave you an opportunity for that empathy, and yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful.
And
Yeah.
so for me, so I always get these I get these intuition, I get these insights and premonition. And I used to be very, how do you say, ashamed or embarrassed to admit
Mhm.
that I have these things that comes to me without asking for it. And I always thought as a kid, like I ran away from that. Because I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be like every other kid. Like I didn't want to hear noises in my head. I didn't want to be able to see things in the future. I don't
Yeah.
want none of those stuff.
Yeah, that's part of that feminine that we've shut down, that's been so shut down that we're trying to find our way back to and embrace it and, reclaim that part of ourselves because it's freaking powerful part of the feminine energy, just like they're superpowers, and for us to be in shame around that and just like, yeah, I'm so passionate about, reclaiming all of that for us. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Continue. Like, I really want you to continue into that line, please, because that's a little bit to compliment with regards to the grief process. And I also wanted to mention something what you said before that was really good. Like for you, for people who feel like they don't have a place to belong, or either they've been given away through adoption or their parent, that they feel abandonment. It's hard when you don't feel like you are linked to something, but I love the fact that you mentioned that you are connected to your ancestor. And that is a powerful thing, because often for me, as the voice comes through my head to prepare me, to warn me about different things, it often comes from my ancestor. I never met them. I just know that it's them because they tell me it's them. I don't even know what they look like. The only person I have ever met or seen was my mom's like my grandmother on my mom's side. That's as far as my ancestor like that I know. But every time they come through, so I know that we are connected, even though they are gone. Their energy and their form are still with us, just as much as my sister is still very much present with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that starting to work with my ancestors there, the connection and yeah, like the intuition and just the feeling of it and just knowing, I was really I started talking to my biological mother and I started telling her, and, I started sharing how I felt, and I didn't hold back, sharing, how hurt I was and there was anger and, but opening a dialogue there, and sharing the energies and, um, recognizing it was through that I was recognizing how much pain she was in. You don't get to that place where you're going to give up your child when you're in a healthy place. There's so many factors going on there, your own guilt and shame, and probably not growing up in a healthy environment. There's definitely financial factors at play. So and all of that passes on to us, she passed on all of that to me. And so there we are now having this conversation and I'm talking to my grandmother, or her mother. And there's a lot of anger on that side of my family and also my father's. But I started just lighting candles for them every day and just talking to them like, I'm so sorry for your pain, just and holding them and just really healing those energies and
Mm.
clearing them for all of us. And that's when I started really, and that cleared so much from me too. It was just like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
so I started really realizing the power of ancestor healing and helping them to clear that energy because that's the part of this death and dying thing. When people die with
Mhm.
that anger and
Mhm.
with their trauma and with their shame, and they haven't had a chance to work through any of that, it stays here on the planet, it stays
Mhm.
here in the family that's
Mhm.
left behind, it
Mhm.
stays, a lot of times people might not transition over and they'll stay, their energy stays here, whether that be in ghosts or, whatever kind of terminology we want to use that, it stays in
Mhm.
the family and you can call that a ghost, but it stays, in the behaviors and patterns of the children, because nothing was resolved and now the person's gone. So it's still here.
Yeah.
So that was a really important piece for me with working with the death and dying aspect was to help clear those energies. And there's the energy piece again. So they didn't continue on, and
Mhm.
so we could clear them from the family.
Mhm.
So they didn't have to keep, repeating those patterns because that's what I was working with for myself. I didn't want to keep repeating those patterns. I
Mhm.
didn't want to take them on. I didn't want to die angry and in shame and
Yeah.
regret and bitterness, um so that was a big piece of that. Then as I kept going on in my studies, I got my master's in thanatology, which is the study of death and dying, which was
Mhm.
really, it's about supporting people through death and dying, which is a lot of grief and bereavement. So I I just started learning so much about different types of grief and loss. And I started to really understand again that the ancestral piece, how the energy trickles down. And I started getting very clear on how many of us women are carrying the grief and trauma of all the generations behind us. There's been so much abuse, sexual trauma, murder, repression of the feminine. It's been going on for thousands of years, and people, they die with their trauma. The women die with their trauma, and they're giving birth. They're giving birth to all of us. So it's not only the women carrying it, but men too, because it's just in our DNA, and we're learning a lot now about epigenetics, which is, I was already working with these concepts, but now then the science I start reading, it's like, oh my gosh, science is saying it too, which I just, intuitively knew these things, but we're seeing how deeply affected we are. We've embodied so much grief and trauma. So that's now, I really started moving out of like the death and dying piece, with people actually dying, and more just about that unconscious grief that we're carrying and how much it's affecting us. I mean, we've got all this disease in the body, we've got low sense of self-worth, we've got really unhealthy relationship patterns that we just keep repeating. We are, repressing ourselves, our emotions, we're shutting ourselves down, we're shutting down our feminine qualities and powers, just like we were talking about earlier. We don't feel good about our bodies, but we're carrying so much grief from the way we were raised too, that when we have our own grief and trauma from sexual abuse or whatever trauma, and then we're giving birth to children and we're raising them from our own mentality that's in a traumatized state. Of course, we're not like raising healthy children, right? I mean, that's just for the most part. I know our parents were doing the best they could, but they're coming from their own trauma. My parents, they didn't do a good job, and I had to try to figure it all out as I got older, and it didn't go well in the earlier part of my life. But luckily now I've got it. I understand. I know they were doing the best they could. They never set out to intentionally harm us, but we're all, my brother and sister and I are all just like kind of, we're affected and dealing with it. But so that is what I'm really passionate about, is trying to educate about this piece, because without it, I think we're really kind of like shooting in the dark here, like reading self-help books or, getting some therapy, but we're not working at it at that unconscious level of the grief and trauma. And we're also not working with it at the energetic level, working with our energy bodies, which is where the sound and energy healing comes in to really, clear that out. So,
what can people expect? Like, it's really, really interesting. Like, let's say, I'm just gonna say I send my boyfriend off, like, well, he's a guy, but let's say it's a woman going off to go and get your services. What does that look like? Like, what can people expect?
first, we fill out a lovely intake form, and that starts us getting into our process. We ask questions there about, what do you hope to gain from this? What kind of traumas might you be working with? What are you looking to clear? It kind of, what are your beliefs on spirituality? Do you feel connected? Because I think that's a huge piece for us too, especially in all the, the traditional religions that we've grown up in. They've been really repressive, especially around the feminine energies, really. So we're working with that too. There's so many aspects, but a pretty good questionnaire and intake form, just start the process and start going into what am I working with? What am I hoping to gain on this journey? Why am I coming to this energy session? What will happen if all of these things happened for me? If I was able to clear what my issues were, where would I be? How would I be feeling about myself? So it's already starting that process and getting our minds into it.
Mhm.
And that's that writing piece again. I feel like therapeutic writing is just really important to help us get out of our minds. I
Yeah.
mean, we know why we're going to go get energy healing because we're trying to clear some stuff. We want to feel better. But
Mhm.
let's really get into that and stop and think. And I love it. I've heard so many great feedback, comments and feedback from that intake form because people are like, nobody's ever asked me these questions before, just like,
Important.
I'm like,
Yes.
exactly, exactly. We're going in, let's
Yeah.
do this thing.
It's like we
Uh,
pinpoint the source. Like I find it really helps because I also have an intake form that people has to fill out. It really just they have to think about it and put it into a piece of paper, like to summarize the essence and the source of various issues. So it really allows you to fast track to really get to where you need to take them instead of like, just coming and they don't know where they're going.
Right. Yeah, it gives me excellent, like, here's where you are and here's where you're trying to be. Now,
Yeah.
how do we get there? Because you've laid it all out and you actually know. That's the thing. They all know, right?
Mhm.
We all have the answers in here.
Yeah.
This just kind of helps to bring them in, help you remember, like, oh yeah, no, I know what I'm doing here, actually. So
It's
then,
just for them to actually hear it out loud, like, when you talk it out, it's like and then somebody reflected back to you, "Oh, that's what I was saying." Because if you're always in your head, you're like it's almost like a record that plays, but you're not really receiving it, so it's nice to be able to put it out there, and then they hear their own voice and they receive it back, yeah.
yeah, totally. So that's the start of that. And then we have a half hour, if it's a distance session, which most of them are now, Zoom time, and we talk about, what came out on the intake form and what the process is about the session. And then this session itself entails just so many different, I use a lot of different sound
Mhm,
and plant medicines, not like cannabis and such, but like basil is a very powerful clearing herb. um yeah, plant essences, stones and crystals, each of these things have their own frequency, and
mm,
our energy bodies, our frequency and vibration, we're made out of sound and vibration. So each of these different frequencies kind of comes in and works to it's kind of a double whammy. It comes in and it clears out the blockages, and then it just soothes and harmonizes the energy body. But it's also about intention, and we're working with it's always kind of funny with like all timelines, lifetimes, realms,
mhm,
and dimensions. So I work
mhm,
at that level, and I connect with people's spirit guides, and I talk to them and say, "Hi there, I'm Sadie.
mhm,
I'm connecting with your person. They've come to see me for an energy healing session. Here's what I've come up with because I connect with my guides and they help me organize the session. Here's what this person needs."
mhm,
And so then I talk to their guides and I'm like, here's what I've come up with. What do you think? What else needs to happen? And then they'll tell me, and they help guide the session, like, she needs this and we really need to work with this. And
mhm.
she's having this issue over here and she needs this. So
So when you
um
say guide, is it somebody that you're talking to, or it's just like being channeled through you?
it just, yeah, it goes channeled. The energy comes in, and the knowing and the awareness comes in. Again, it's not like, yeah, I'm not like talking. Well, I'm verbally talking, but they're sending energy
Mhm,
through.
mhm,
And it's a fascinating process because I'm just, and then I'm sharing it with people. And
mhm,
this can happen in, real time, where I'm talking to their guides and they're here. And I'm like, okay, they're saying this, this, and this. And they're like, ah, yes, okay, yeah, totally. It's just like,
mhm.
'cause sometimes it feels ridiculous to me. I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying right now, but they're saying this and they're like, no, yeah, I get it. It makes total sense.
Mhm,
Because it's really in for me, I say it's people's guides, but then I tell them, I'm like, this is just you, this is your higher self. And
mhm.
again, they always know what they need. They're like, yes, I know that. I'm like, of course you do. You
Mhm.
just need to hear it, you know,
Yeah.
you just need to hear it. So, um, but through the clearing, it the frequencies know what needs to go. So, the after effects, I mean, we can go back into childhood trauma and clear things out. We're clearing out what's going on right now. But again, working with the ancestors, clearing for them as well. There's just, yeah, there's just a lot that happens. And it works on a physical level too. You know, of course, our bodies start feeling better because we're clearing these energies out.
Mhm.
So, you know, people have come to me for just physical issues, which is not just physical, it's metaphysical expressing through the body. They think, oh, my knee is hurting. I'm like, okay, well, you know,
Mhm.
we're gonna kill this ancestor over here. And you know,
Yeah.
so but but yeah, so and then and working with, you know, we're talking about unconscious grief. We're digging into that, like what is that, how is that showing up for you? We're looking at the various different aspects of the wounded feminine,
Mhm.
and because that's the energy healing part. But then there's also, we get everything into it, body, mind, and spirit. We have to use our minds too to get into this. So understanding and seeing the patterns, seeing the how the wounded feminine is showing up in our lives. Like, I just created this really lovely document just highlighting like 13 of the top ways that the unconscious grief of the wounded feminine is showing up in your life. And there's, you know, unhealthy sexual expression, unhealthy relationship to our sexuality. That's a huge piece for us, and we really get into that. Bitterness and resentment, you know, towards that can come out towards our partner. You know, a lot of anger that just comes out. We're really angry underneath there, you know, and
Mhm.
it can come out really kind of subtly, you know, just getting really bitter and frustrated with our partner for not showing up as we want them to,
Yeah.
which is just projecting. It's putting it outwards because we're not taking responsibility for how we really feel about ourselves, you know? So that was a big one for me. The victim consciousness, you know, blaming the patriarchy, blaming our partner, blaming life circumstances, blaming, you know, all these external factors for how we're showing up and how our life is. So, you know, taking responsibility for that.
Mhm.
You know, being in competition with other women, you know, there's a lot of that too, putting other women down and not being supportive. So there's many ways. And also all the what's the word I'm looking for? The oh my gosh, I just read it. The strange autoimmune diseases that so many women are dealing with. This is really carrying so much stuff, so much heavy, dense energies that our bodies are just shutting down. You know, they just can't take it anymore. And, you know, the energy healing and working with that and bringing it to our conscious really heals the body and really works with that too. So, um, yeah, I get really excited about this.
Yeah, you seem very passionate about it, and you're like the right person to actually do this because it takes somebody who really believes and have faith in it and is extremely passionate about what you're teaching. That's what gives it results. So I think you're a great person for that. And you've gone through so much trauma yourself that you can really understand, empathize with the other person or what they may be going through. And you have such a beautiful little laugh. It's just so soothing to the heart. I love it with a beautiful smile. I wanted to also use this moment to highlight any program that you might have going on. I know that you have some that's coming up in April, but since this is launching in about 7 weeks, but you know, you'll do a repeat of them. So I want you to be able to share this with people because it's important when we talk about generational healing. I really do see that. Like I see patterns from my mom and my dad that I repeat, and I am working very hard to break those patterns so that my children don't have to continue carrying that on. So working really hard at it. Not the easiest thing, but it's important to just be aware and just do your best, and at least you're working towards it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it really in a nutshell. But yeah, this latest program I have out is Women Healing Through Intergenerational Trauma. And it's a 6-week program that utilizes writing, the therapeutic writing piece again, to really help us to get into it. We're going to learn about what intergenerational trauma is, that's a big word, what is inherited trauma, what is unconscious grief, how does that show up in my life, and really get a good understanding of it, how it's developed through the various systems of our societies that we've been in and perpetuated, and through all of the abuse and such. So how that's, trickled down or snowballed down. It hasn't trickled really at all. But so the writing piece, learn that we're going to do writing. We're going to do rituals. Each week there's a personal ritual to really get into what this is for us, because everybody is their own unique person, and I can tell you about this, but what is it for you, and when you sit down and do ritual for yourself and with your ancestors and start healing them, then we start to get a really good understanding of the energies that are at play, and get very conscious about healing those energies all the way back, and that heals it going forward. So and then it's group sessions every week, so we connect with the other women that we're working with that are also doing this powerful work, and it's an energy and sound healing session every week, because it's not enough to just dredge up the energy, or dredge it all up. Then once it's up, now let's clear it out. That is the key piece of this, because there's a lot of programs out there, talking about feminine energies and such, and trauma and such, but this goes in with an energy healing session to really move it out. And the first 3 weeks are focused on more like what the issues are, what is the grief and trauma, and then the 3 weeks after is more about empowerment. Okay, now what? All right, now we get all that, we understand what we're working with, so now we can really be free of it, really clear it. And how do we move stronger into our empowered sacred feminine energies? Not to say that at the end of this 6 weeks you're going to be done and healed. It's an ongoing lifelong process, right? But you're going to have a lot of the understanding and awareness and tools now to move forward. And that last week we finished with a death ceremony, which is like Phoenix rising. We put to death our wounded feminine, and we have the phoenix rising from the ashes into our strong, sacred, empowered feminine energy. And that's part of grief that's really important, is the ritual to help us to move forward, ritualizing the various aspects. That's just really signals to our body, mind, and spirit change and transformation. So hence the ritual in this. It really supports a powerful process. So
But all of that
yeah.
really does, rituals are very, very powerful. I did holding circles before, and it's how do you say? I've never been in any type of environment where you can just exist and be in your space, however
Yeah.
shape and form you come. It's very healing. And like the sounds and music and the writings, those are like, you don't need to be spoken to. You hear music, you hear sound. It really hits through the heart. There's like a frequency that really just speaks. Like, I think we are energy, but I think there's frequencies and everything too. So that's why music and sound really does something in terms of clearing it out. Yes, very important. You get it out, it needs to be released.
Yes. Yeah. It's not enough to just bring it up to our consciousness. It's like, okay, now what? Now I'm stuck in this. Like, it's like, no. Now let's clear it out. It's cleared out. And it's an intense program. I mean, we're going deep because it's necessary. It's not a fluffy, pink rainbows and unicorns, women's circle type thing. This is like, okay, when you're ready to just really like
Yeah.
be free from some of this stuff and really face what's under there, and just like get in it. It's
Pretty
Yeah.
powerful. I mean, I'm sure people must be going through so many emotion, like things they didn't expect to be, things that they're learning. Could be quite scary, but at the same time, when you go through it all, can be extremely empowering. It could be extremely healing. And then you find yourself back in touch with your source and your being. So, which is we're all looking to reconnect to who we are. We just get lost in our path.
Yeah, that's the real key of this is returning to our heart. Who are we underneath all of this stuff? So
Mhm.
this is the process of coming back into our authentic selves, getting back in touch with our intuition, in touch with our bodies, in touch with our sacred feminine qualities that have been so shunned and shamed for so long. But yeah, the truth of our hearts, and so many of us just like we don't even know where to begin to start finding that,
Yeah.
it's more of like a mental exercise, which
Mhm.
is why this is a lot of this is bypassing the mind and just going down into the body and into the heart. And yeah, it is intense work. So creating a really safe, strong container for all of this, and hence like the weekly groups, and then there's a community forum so we can connect with each other all throughout the thing, because it is important, big work.
Yes,
And we
yes,
need
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
big
support
work,
around
but so well needed.
it.
And that is why, like, I always find myself amazed. I haven't gone to a whole lot, but every time I go to these, you come out of that like a brand new woman, as if you shed, I don't know, 100 pounds.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I love this
yeah.
thing. So I love that you shared all of that. We're coming close to the hour. I want to be able to also let you leave with the last word, but also first, before I do that, I want people to know how they can reach you. What's the best way to reach you? Like, how can, do you have a website that you want to share? I'll share
Yes.
all of the link anyways together. But just out loud.
Um, healingsacredfeminine.com, that's the best way. There's a contact form on there. There's all like community events, sessions that I offer, programs, all the things, and so much information. It's just rich with resources and tools on there to support people on their journeys. So, yeah, I'm just all about it.
Awesome, awesome. We need you to be all about it. That's how you're gonna be able to help people. So
Yeah.
on this note, Sadie, I want to be able to leave you with the last word. What is the one quote that has served you in your life, either in your past or in the present or going in the future? What is that one quote that really lifts up your heart and really inspires, has help inspire your life, but also to inspire others out there?
It's my favorite quote of all time. And I say it a lot. I
I
use
can't
it.
wait to hear what it is.
It's Ram Dass. He said, "We are all just walking each other home."
Oh,
I know, right? It's just like, and to me, that's it. That's it. We're just walking each other on this journey, this healing journey, this journey to our hearts, back to our hearts, out of fear,
yeah.
this fear-based way we've been living, and back into our hearts, back to love. So yeah, that's it for me.
Oh, I love it. Walking each other back to our home, to our heart. I love it. And can ask for a better company than yourself, helping all of these beautiful women to find their way back home. I love it. What a beautiful way to end. I wanted to thank you so much, wishing you so much success. And please do reach out and really go and visit her website, fill out the intake, get curious, because these type of work really gets you to open up in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. And it's just you come out of there refreshed.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This was really just quite beautiful. You are just lovely. Thank
Oh,
you.
same with you. I am just so happy to connect and to find the soul. Like, so I've been so grateful with the podcast. Like, I find, like, I mean, I started at the beginning. It was very nice meeting all, but as I scale up, it just like these other new energy. And so you are one of them. And it's because, and the fact that you reach out and you connect, it was really meant to be. So thank you for the beautiful energy that you're, sharing with us, and also the space to be able to speak about it openly and help others as well heal through the process. But thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So bye, everyone.